Hi, I'm Rick Anthony, and welcome to the Someone You Should Know podcast, the podcast that focuses on musicians, authors, and interesting people. We like to say we're making a difference one artist at a time. So sit back, have a cold one, and get ready to meet someone you should know. On the podcast with me, we're always featuring musicians and authors and interesting people. And over the last couple of weeks, we've had a couple of my radio friends, some DJs that I know. Today, we're doing another DJ, but he's not on the radio. This guy has been working the clubs for quite some time. An incredible success at it, too, so much so that he's got himself a book here. It's called DJs Mean Business. One Night Behind the Turntables Can Spin Your Company's Success. Will you please welcome Amani Roberts? Welcome aboard.
Thank you very much, Rick. It's a pleasure to be here.
Also known as DJ AmRo, a.k.a.
Yes.
The Amani Experience. My daughter always told me, says, Dad, you're not hip enough to be a club DJ.
We don't know.
I did my share of it. I'll tell you about that in a little bit later. But first, I want to find out, how did your love affair with spinning in clubs begin?
When I was in college, Howard University in Washington, D.C., I went to go see DJ Biz Markie. May he rest in peace. Mm-hmm. And he set the crowd off that night. It was amazing. He had a segment in the middle of his set, where he played a lot of TV theme show songs.
You're kidding me. That's awesome.
Yes. And we were singing along and everything. And that was when I was like, I wanted to kind of do what he did. And I would say that's when my love affair really began. Uh-huh. It just took me a while to get to it.
All right. Very good. Well, I've done 44 years in radio, and I've made my share of personal experiences in clubs. And I've always enjoyed the security of being locked away in a radio studio, but you're right there in the public eye. Have you ever had a situation where you've kind of feared your surroundings?
Feared, I would say maybe not feared, but there have been some instances. Like one time there was a girl who passed out right next to the DJ booth. We had to get her some help. Another time there was someone who wanted to do some cocaine on the turntables.
Oh, dear God.
I was like, no, that's not going to happen tonight. So those were the two that come to mind real quick.
I had a experience. I was actually doing a live remote for New Year's Eve. Okay, so it's New Year's Eve. You got a very, energetic crowd. The problem is I'm working for a classic rock station, and we're doing our countdown of the top party songs of the millennium or whatever it might have been. And this club is used to playing, hip hop and dance music and such. And it's kind of hard to dance to Stairway to Heaven.
Yes.
And it was just an ugly night where they ran out of food at like 10 o'clock. They ran out of liquor at 11:30. And I'm basically saying, Happy New Year, last call.
Yeah. That's a tough one for you.
Not a good situation. I'll never forget that. It was probably one of the worst club experiences I ever had. I was spinning in clubs back in the 80s, which meant I had to lug albums and 45s. This was before CDs. Now that technology has changed, what can you tell an individual who's contemplating maybe spinning, in the near future, the technology that's available to them and the stuff that you use?
Well, nowadays you don't need to, haul crates around and bring records and everything. You can have it all there on a computer. You can even have it on like a little zip drive like this, and it really makes it the bar the bar has been lowered for accessing it. Now, that doesn't mean that, you still will easily be able to know how to read a crowd and move a room and kind of cycle through. That's going to take some practice. But the technology that's available now will allow many people to at least learn the process of being a DJ. And then from then, it's up to you to kind of collect your music, organize your music, and learn how to kind of read a room.
That's the thing I wanted to ask you about as far as reading a room. I always seem to struggle with that a little bit. Yeah. What would you say is the first thing you need to do when it comes to reading a room? What's the first thing you do when you get ready to play that venue? Do you do a little background research on maybe going out the night before or something like that and checking what kind of crowd they have?
Yeah, either the night before, say you're booked to play a Saturday, then maybe you could try to get there on the Saturday prior, a couple weeks before, just to see what it is. Or you talk to maybe people who have DJed there before, some of your DJ colleagues, just so you can see for that night what type of music they like. Even talk to security, who's a great asset to have, and just see what music they really like. And then you can go from there. If it's in a particular region of the country, there could be some songs that are like classics for that specific region. You got to do a lot of research to figure that out. Go online, use different sources, and talk to people who've been there before, who are always there. And then listen, also when you're there DJing, see what kind of requests you get, and that'll kind of steer you the right way. Not that you have to play all the requests, but see what kind of requests you do get.
Awesome. Very good. We're speaking with DJ AmRo, Amani Roberts. He's got a brand new book on it. We're going to talk more about that in just a second. But before we continue, I hope you're enjoying the podcast. Everyone knows that we're available online on the World Wide Web at Someoneyoushouldknowpodcast.com. There you'll find the recent news, our archive of past episodes. And if you are enjoying the podcast, we invite you to, of course, leave a review and let us know how we're doing. We're also blessed to be heard all around the world. I would like to thank a couple of cities. Hesse, Germany's listening. Also, Kent in the United Kingdom. And Winnetka, Colorado. We thank you so very much for tuning in. And we'd like to say thanks so much for having DJ AmRo, Amani Roberts, on today as we get back to our interview. The book is called DJs Mean Business. I got it right here. And it is One Night Behind the Turntables Can Spin Your Company's Success. Who is the book geared to, and what are they going to gain by reading this book?
The book is geared to a couple different demographics of people. First of all, anyone who maybe is interested in becoming a DJ, they can just understand my process, how I got there, the schooling I went through. And then for other people who are looking to grow their business or their career, because the book kind of draws a parallel between a DJ set from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. To growing your business when you're first starting out, or growing your career when you're first trying to find your first job. And then it takes you through each 15-minute time slots for what you want to accomplish. So like we talked about before, you first start off at the gig, it's 10 p.m. You get there, you got to kind of see who's there, who do you want to keep in the room, and grow from there. In business, you have to identify your ideal avatar, who's your ideal client, and then start to grow from there. We fast forward to prime time, maybe that's like midnight, and you just want to keep the dance floor packed hit after hit. In sales, you want to keep sales growing week over week, month over month, and in your career, you just want to continue to ascend. Go from one job, get some more responsibility, and build. So that's how the book takes you through the entire night behind the DJ. There's a favorite chapter on troubleshooting. As you know, there's always something that might go wrong, so you need to fix it on the fly, but the music can't stop. Same thing in business. There's a part on nostalgia. I love slow jams. How do you use nostalgia in business to bring in maybe an older generation, but also be relevant to the kids? I love how Adidas and Nintendo and Old Spice do a good job with that. And then what seems to be the favorite chapter for people is when I talk about feedback. I used to drive for Uber back in the day, so after I'd be done at the club, I'd turn on the Uber meter to try to get a ride when I was going home, so kind of take me closer when I was going home, and I'd get people from the club who I just left, and they're like, oh, what'd you think about the DJ? We talk about it. And then at the end, I say, I was a DJ, so thank you for the feedback. And they kind of bug out or whatever. So those are just some examples of the chapter, but it takes you through the time slots of a DJ set and relates it to growing a business and growing your career.
Wonderful. That's nice how you parallel. How did this all come together as far as writing this particular book? Because my wife says, after your 44-year career, you've talked to thousands of people, you need to write a book. I don't write a book. That's why I'm doing the podcast.
Yeah.
How hard was it to put this together?
It took me some effort. You kind of got some parts where I was a little stuck with some quote unquote writer's block. So it took about a year and a half, and then the editing process. Really, I wanted to further establish myself as a thought leader in the creative space, in the DJ space. And so a book is a great way to do it. I'm writing a second book too, to further kind of establish myself. And, that's kind of was the reason. Also, I just wanted to open myself up for more public relations opportunities, such as appearing on a podcast as yours, professional speaking, things of that nature, and you need a book. So those are the reasons. It's also a smaller income stream. You probably won't make a lot of money writing a book, but it comes in slowly but surely, and it opens yourself up for different types of appearances, and people really take you seriously. My students, they kind of bug out about it too. So it's just a good kind of marketing, I don't want to say tactic, but just something in your kind of tool belt for marketing. Open yourself up for different markets, and writing. It's the start of something that I can build on.
Very good. Now you've clubbed it out in Los Angeles for a long time. You've been out there in LA. How does that compare to like the East Coast?
Clubs, it's different now because a lot of the same songs that are popular on the East Coast are popular on the West Coast because of the kind of the I think I'm using the right word, decentralization of radio, where it's all playlist based and everything. Yeah. But there are some local hits that you play out here. Like if I go East Coast to where I'm from, Washington, D.C., you definitely put on some go-go music. Here, it might not work so well. You have to get more West Coast style music. So you just have to kind of know your market. Here's a little bit probably more chill or laid back than the East Coast. It just depends on the city and the day and who's hosting the party too.
All right, very good. One struggle I've always faced in my radio career was undervaluing my talent. When they're saying, hey, what are you asking for type thing. I always seem to undervalue myself. I always considered myself the Kmart priced talent. How do you establish a price and then stick to it?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's a very challenging thing to do because, there's fear involved. You could be, if you price yourself too high, then they won't book you. So for that one night, you will be maybe at home, not being booked. So you really have to work on your money mindset and just really stick to what your value is. And your value will continue to increase as you have more experience and you say your price and you have your kind of walk away number. And then even if you don't have a gig booked for that day, you must have the mindset that when I turn this down because they don't meet my price, something else bigger will come in that will meet my price. It's really just about mindset and believing that, you know your worth. And then you're going to continue to move forward and not think about it on an individual day by day basis because it's not really linear like that. But it's really about mindset, money mindset, and sticking to it. It's very difficult because, as a creative, your income is very volatile, up and down. It's hard to predict at times. So you really, you have to stick to your worth and believing that you what you're worth and then not really wavering from it because eventually you'll get it. But it's just a mindset, and that's very difficult. So I'm glad you asked that question.
Very good. Now, this podcast is recorded, it's produced, and it goes live on a future date. You say that live streaming can grow your brand. Can you elaborate on that?
For example, if you were to, we're broadcasting this podcast now. If you were to live stream it on a platform, whether it be like LinkedIn or YouTube, Twitch, any of those kind of popular live streaming platforms, you could reach people across the world. In addition to whoever subscribes to the podcast, you can be live in LA, New York, over in Tokyo, the UK. It just opens up a place for people to see you and get to know you on a more personal, intimate level. And then for businesses, live streaming is a good way to network. It's a good way for people to really get to know you and your brand instead of it being kind of very edited and curated. Mm-hmm. It's a more authentic and organic way to get to know you one-on-one as they watch you on screen and they get to know you. So I think it's a win-win. I think it's underutilized in the corporate world. And I think you're starting to see people get adjusted to it and use it a little more. But I think it's definitely, once again, it's another great tool to have in your tool belt as you market yourself and your brand.
Here's a question that actually came up today, and I was talking to my son about this because he's on Twitch and he does a live stream and such. Is there a difference between seeing your face versus seeing an avatar of your face?
Yes. So an avatar is probably a little less personal than like seeing your actual face. But some people do that on Twitch too. Like I'm a partner streamer on Twitch, so I've been on there for almost 3 years. So there's a difference. It's probably a little less personal, but at least you're on there. They hear your voice, so that would count unless you use a voice altering kind of plugin. But so I say it's a little less personal than your actual face. I'm of the fan if you're live streaming, then, just show who you are and let people really get to know you. And I think that'll create a stronger bond between you and your community.
In my case, 44 years of being behind a microphone, I have a great face for radio. Now, Amani's a good-looking guy. Now, we're going to talk.
I think you'll be fine.
We're going to talk about branding here. Now, when I see you, and especially anything that I've really seen you in, with the exception of right now, you've got on a bow tie, you've got on some nice threads and stuff like that. That is part of your brand and who you are. Branding is especially important, especially since everybody is doing podcasts. What are some branding tips to separate you from the rest of the noise?
I think I just say I wear bow ties a lot. I also have, some good pictures and kind of cartoons of myself, which help with the brand and the logo. I think that just keeping things consistent, having different options that you can use, but still fit into your brand using the same colors. You can't tell here, but like orange is a really big color for me. Like orange and white is a big color. Using the same fonts, just really getting down to the same specific things so people know what they see. I think also even as simple as trying to create the same screen names across all the platforms so people know to look you up and look up the same kind of screen name. I think that's very important in this social media era. And then even flyers that you may use to broadcast your gigs in person or online, try to keep them similar so people know, I know that's a flyer for Amani. And then with the website, just try to continue to update the website with like video, photos, kind of keep it so that people will go back and check, have some variety in the social media content you share. I mean, we could keep like newsletters. There's so much to branding. It's a lot to keep track of, but try to keep it consistent with the colors, the timing of it, and just communicate. And I think that's what branding success I've seen and the tips that I would give to people if they're asking.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That can be found in his book, by the way. It's called DJs Mean Business. One Night Behind the Turntables Can Spin Your Company's Success. We're going to talk about where that's available in just a bit, but I want to talk about your podcast now. Like you, I've got a podcast. You've got a podcast. Yours is called the Amani Experience Podcast. What'll podcast listeners find when they go and where is it available also?
So it's available on all platforms, even my website, AmaniExperience.com/podcast. We talk to people who used to work in the corporate space but have left to do something more creative. It's been on a hiatus a little bit because I partnered up with a colleague of mine, and we have a podcast called Adventures in Business. So that's what's taking my time the last year. But that's my podcast. I have to figure out a way to kind of bring it back because I love doing interviews. I'm very skilled at doing interviews. And so that's what we have the interviews that we do. We put them up there. But that's the podcast. It's been around for a while. I think I'm up to about 172 episodes, so a lot of episodes. And it just continues to evolve. I'm trying to figure out how to kind of relaunch it now with current content. But podcasts are another great way to network and create content and really kind of get your marketing and your word out there. So I'm a fan. I think it's another great tool in the tool belt. I said that 3 times, but that's what my podcast is about.
Absolutely. I just retired from doing radio, and this is my little buffer to keep me from asking for my old job back. I gotta ask you the most unusual place that you ever DJ'd or place that you had to speak. Because I've had a lot of weird remotes that I've had to do or stations I've had to work for that are a little on the unusual side. How about you? Anything unusual?
I would say maybe, I forget the name. It's the name of this famous boat or ship that was here in Long Beach. I have to look it up real quick and see what it is. That was probably strange because it was like a haunted ship.
Oh, the Queen Mary.
The Queen Mary.
Yep.
Queen Mary. So that was probably one right there. After that, I did a party during the World Cup in Brazil. That was probably really cool over in Brazil or down in Brazil. Those are the 2 that come to mind right away. I'm trying to think. I DJ'd at the basement of a bank before.
Those are always fun.
Those are probably the top 3 that come to mind.
Or doing from the children's department of a Sears store.
Yeah, I haven't done that yet, but that would be strange too.
How did you handle COVID during that time frame? Is that when you wrote the book or what?
Yeah, so COVID, actually, the book came out April 2020, right at the beginning of COVID. And COVID was tough. All the DJ gigs went away. That's when I actually really got into live streaming. Started to live stream and really spent a lot of time on like Twitch and learning about live streaming, which is a huge learning curve. I would teach people about live streaming. So I had a show. I was on Twitch. I think I did 54 days in a row streaming. This is while I was still teaching virtually for the university. And then I had about 4 days a week, 4 or 5 days a week, when I would stream talk show, game shows, DJ sets. So COVID was really, really for the live streaming. And then I did virtual events too, via Zoom or other platforms. I would have my DJ booth, learned about green screens. I knew nothing about this. I knew nothing about cameras, microphones, audio interfaces, green screens, OBS, learned about it all on the fly, pretty much with the help of my colleagues in YouTube. So that was like the COVID was kind of the live streaming virtual era. Now we're kind of back out in the wild. So I still do some streaming 1 or 2 days a week. I do a virtual event every once in a while, but now we're kind of back in person. And that's how I handle COVID. So I was able to kind of get through it. I'm very thankful that I did have my professor job at Cal State University Fullerton because that allowed me to get some income in because there was no income in for DJing out in the public. We did get some income from live streaming. But that's kind of how I handled that. That just taught me to be very flexible and creative, think on the fly, and be humble enough to understand that there's some new skills I need to learn. I'm going to learn them in front of people, so there could be some mistakes. But now I do very well live streaming, and I like it. So that's just, another tool in the tool belt that I'm able to use. And, I can now use it for my in real life gigs too.
Awesome. Very good. Let's talk about your social medias as far as where we can find you.
So for social media, it's Amani Experience. So A like Apple, M like Mary, A like Apple, N like Nancy, I Experience, one word. That's on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. It's Amani Roberts on LinkedIn. I do a lot of work on LinkedIn. So you can just type in Amani Roberts space DJ and I'll pop up there. You could find the book on all online retailers, whether it be Kindle, Amazon, Barnes and Nobles. That we did a second edition Audible version where after each chapter I get interviewed by a good friend and colleague, Melissa Majors. So that's on Audible. So you can get the book there. And my website is AmaniExperience.com. Come in, sign up for the newsletter. And then if you're looking for me to come and speak at your conference or for your organization, just reach out to me via email or the contact form on the website, and that's the best way to reach me.
Absolutely. This guy knows what he's talking about. He's done a couple of interviews, I can tell. It's nice to talk to another professional because there's oftentimes we get an individual who's never been on mic or, it's just kind of a little unusual. But this is a great book. I highly recommend you go out and get yourself a couple hundred copies here. DJs Mean Business, and it's the night behind the turntables can spin your company's success. Amani Roberts, my guest today. It's been an absolute pleasure, brother. I hope you have a wonderful remainder of your 2023. Any closing thoughts?
If there are people out there who are thinking about maybe learning how to DJ, don't let the technology scare you. Just start slow. Take it day by day and practice and learn. And I think that you'll be pleasantly surprised. So try not to let fear prevent you from at least learning and trying to go for it. That would be my final thoughts.
Awesome. Very good. And it's always, you're never too old to do this too, folks. I'm telling you. Just because the kids are young in the clubs doesn't mean that someone who's in their 60s and just restarting their life can't do something like this too. You just got to know your audience. That's what Amani tells you about in his book. Once again, DJs Mean Business. Buy a couple hundred copies. I'm sure you're going to love it. Hey, Christmas is only, 6 months away?
Yes.
Start shopping now.
It's only 6 months away, yes.
Start shopping now.
Yeah.
Amani, it's been an absolute treat. God bless you, brother. Have yourself a great day.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on, Rick. It's been fun.
Hi, I'm Rick Anthony. I want to thank you so much for tuning in for our podcast today. Now, listen, I want to go ahead and share some friends of mine who also have a podcast. Give them a listen, and I invite you to check us out next time right here on the Someone You Should Know podcast. Here's my friends from the Rock and Roll Chicago podcast.
Hey, everybody, it's Ray the Roadie.
And this is Hollywood Mike
with the Rock and Roll Chicago podcast, coming to you from the Illinois Rock and Roll Museum on Route 66 in Joliet, Illinois.
Where once a week we are interviewing local musicians and singer-songwriters. And the podcast itself covers a wide range of topics, including, but not limited to, the history of rock and roll in Chicago, the current state of the scene, and the challenges and opportunities facing musicians today.
So join us every Tuesday for a new exciting episode of the Rock and Roll Chicago podcast.